the core focus of our company is building stress resilience and calming nervous system tension as a means to expand capacity, expanding mental and physical capacity to take on new challenges, new information. But I think it's important that we define what nervous system tension is with a good analogy and talk a little bit about how nervous system tension increases, what the consequences of increased nervous system tension are, and quickly hit on a few ways to lower nervous system tension, which will probably carry over into another video. But before we get into mounting nervous system tension, we're going to use the term parasympathetic and sympathetic. Parasympathetic, just for simplicity, is going to be rest and digest. It's when your body is allocating energy and resources, which are finite, to more proactive, reparative, and growth processes like tuning the immune system, protein synthesis, reparative processes in the gut, neurogenesis, and neuroplasticity. Your body is prioritizing longevity. And in the parasympathetic state, your mind is more cerebral, so you have more front brain or top brain control. And then a sympathetic is your reactive. Most people know it as fight or flight. It's your reactive state. And by design, it is allocating physical and mental resources towards very short-term outcomes. When you're in the sympathetic state, your mind and body does not care about longevity. It cares about surviving the moment. When you're encountering a life-threatening situation, longevity is not important. Like 5 minutes from now is important. So resources are literally allocated towards reactions. To put it on a visual, let's put parasympathetic and sympathetic on a scale, which is true. Like, you're not all parasympathetic or all sympathetic at any one point in time, unless you're really on the extremes. Nervous system tension is really going to define where on that scale you are. Nervous system tension is how much stress are you carrying at any one point in time, physical and mental. And as that stress mounts or nervous system tension rises, you are going to be moving closer and closer or deeper and deeper into what's called sympathetic dominance. You don't want to be sympathetic dominant. Sympathetic activity is guaranteed on a daily basis. You're not going to fully avoid sympathetic activity. You don't want to. Yeah. Stress is important to development. It's completely necessary to the learning process. If we didn't experience stress, we'd all be dead. Like, just on quality of life, experiencing stress is very necessary to experience joy and happiness. So stress is going to be there. Sympathetic activity is something that can help fuel you and move you. Some people take it to a toxic level and ride that cortisol wave as a way to get shit done. But if you want an optimal experience in life with physical health, mental health, sleep quality, connection, build real relationships, you need that parasympathetic balance so that you can maintain front brain control, you can build and repair and recover. So we're going to take that scale between sympathetic and parasympathetic and represent it as a pitcher of water. Everybody's going to have some amount of water in that pitcher, and that water is representative of stress or growing nervous system tension. Everything is going to have some sort of stress response by design. Like, we can't just float through life naive to what's going on around us. So our brain is designed to recognize threats, and we have this unique brain where we can perceive threats where they aren't, and that is often the case. Stress is very subjective in that way, but ultimately, as your day goes on, you typically accumulate more water in that pitcher, and which is why a lot of people at the end of the day have less capacity to take on new information or make decisions than they do first thing in the morning. And if we're talking about like an extreme short-term scale on this pitcher, like on a daily basis or even a weekly basis, you start experiencing more stressors than normal that you don't have experience with, like being late or not feeling prepared, or you get a flat tire and maybe you forget your wallet at home and you get pulled over, you get a speeding ticket. If those things all happen in a short period of time and you don't have really good stress resilience, that pitcher is going to start filling up. it's going to start filling up pretty fast. And then your ability to take on new shit, whether positive or negative, is more challenging, because as that water level rises, as that nervous system tension rises and gets deeper into the sympathetic state, your brain is becoming more reactive. And you're not going to be able to filter or process information through that productive lens of parasympathetic balance that is more top brain dominant, more cerebral. So as information comes in with mounting nervous system tension, you become more reactive to it. I think most people can identify short-term extreme rises in that level. You know, whether you're a mom who's got kids tugging on her shirt, and then, you know, you drop a can of tomato juice and it breaks all over the floor, and you got to get the kids the hell out of the kitchen, and you got to clean it up, and then, you know, the dog wants to go outside, and your mom is calling, and then work is calling, you know, and you're like, ah, and then you start falling behind, and that nervous system tension is rising, 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 and you become more reactive. It's not a good time to be solving problems when you're in that state. You're not in no capacity to be thinking about long-term outcomes. You know, you got to bring that nervous system tension down quite a bit before you can start being proactive. Even if you're not a stay-at-home mom, if you're just, you know, a 9-to-5 or a small business owner or a CEO or someone who's even just taking time to travel the country, obstacles are going to be there, and sometimes they happen more intensely in a short period of time, and that's going to cause you to feel more of that tension, feel more of that stress, and be more reactive to your environment. Your physical resources are also being allocated to extreme. I use the analogy, as that nervous system tension rises, your RPMs are going up, and you're not able to shift gears. So you're burning your fuel, you're burning your energy much faster when you're in that high tension of stress, which is going to cause less endurance. You're going to be fatigued a lot faster. Your energy levels at the end of the day are going to be a lot lower. I know people can relate to this after they experience something that's very emotional or very stressful, that they're going to have a dump at the end of it. Because as that sympathetic activity rises, you're literally ramping up your RPMs, pulling resources away from things like digestion to put more energy to your extremities to either fight or flee. Ultimately, that's not sustainable, and you're going to crash. That was a good little snippet of nervous system tension rising, that water rising in that pitcher on both a daily and a weekly, if it's intense, level. And the top of that pitcher represents that meltdown. Like, you don't want to hit top of pitcher. Top of pitcher is zero capacity. So I'll explain that. Capacity is going to be that space between the water level and the top of the pitcher. That's how much more wick or mental and physical energy you have, capacity, to take on new challenges or new problems. To our analogies of short term, once you reach a certain level, like you're real close to that tipping point, it just takes one thing to make you melt down. You know what I mean? A goal in optimizing performance in health, because health is longevity, health is proactive processes, mental and physical health, you have to get out of the reactive state, is going to be lowering that nervous system tension, expanding that capacity. So while most people can identify the short-term rise, the acute rise in nervous system tension that leads to that more physical and mental reactive state, I think very few people, including myself until I became more well-versed on this topic, it's hard to identify that slow creep in nervous system tension, slow creep in what's called baseline nervous system tension. So baseline nervous system tension, if we're using the pitcher analogy or the spectrum between parasympathetic and sympathetic, that baseline is where you start. You're never going to start at zero, right? So you're going to start at some point as an accumulation of stressors in your life. That's inevitable, and again, you want that. You want some baseline level of stress. The problem is, it's hard to identify the slow creep, the slow increase in sympathetic activity as you move on with life. What happens is that slow creep actually rises your baseline. So every day, if you're someone who's increasing nervous system tension over time, that capacity is closing. That space between your water level and top of pitcher is shortening. So over time, you slowly become more mentally reactive, and you become more physically reactive to your environment. Physically reactive, not necessarily being aggression, more like the allocation of resources within your body becomes more maladaptive. Maladaptive instead of adaptive. So that's a good thing to define real quick. A stress response is adaptive. It's, like we mentioned earlier, it's one of the reasons we're still here as a species, because we can identify threats and we can make decisions and reactions to those threats that keep us alive. And so in the short term, in the very short term, like in the moment of reaction, that is adaptive. It keeps us alive. It keeps our species alive. But it's only meant to be run in a very short period of time, that stress response, that reaction. After the event is over, you are supposed to come back to baseline. After you fall deeper into exhaustion, you come back up to baseline. But in the long term, it's maladaptive. It's a system that was designed to keep us alive is now destroying us if it is allowed to go chronic, because those resources are being pulled away from longevity and long-term health processes like digestion and adaptive immune system and protein synthesis and cellular detox, and the self-auditing processes that your cells go through to keep misfolded proteins cleaned up before they replicate and all that stuff. So when I say physically reactive, it's that maladaptive resource allocation that has physical health consequences as well as mental health consequences. So that nervous system tension rises in that picture. You're becoming slowly over time more sympathetic dominant, meaning more of that energy is being given to lower brain processes, your lizard brain. Less of those resources are given towards long-term health outcomes. So you can paint the picture that you start to degrade slowly. And the sooner people can identify that that's happening and they can course correct and start building what's called stress resilience and lower that nervous system tension to expand that capacity, the more parasympathetic balance they establish and the more energy and resources they have towards reparative long-term health, towards cerebral prioritization, problem solving, all these things that are important to success on all levels, success in health, success in relationship, success in finances. This all requires health. It's the foundation. You got to be healthy. You can't be reactive. You got to be proactive in how you address things. So, of course, on the long term, there are going to be moments where you press up against the high end of that picture, where you become reactive. You're not just going to float through life, like it's going to happen. But what's important is that the set point of your stress is in that parasympathetic balanced state, where you have more room on every day. You have this capacity to take on new things. And so if a series of events does happen to you that is shitty, and you're unprepared for, you're not so close to that tipping point. You can take these challenges on, you can take this information on, you can say, okay, I got to get a plan together, I can handle this. Maybe you got to make quick decisions, maybe you got to make long decisions, but you're making cerebral decisions. So that nervous system tension is got to be under control.